So how do you create a brand that truly represents who you are and the products you sell, as well as building a business that you can scale online? That is what this podcast will help you do. My name is Henry Kaminski Jr., and welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast.
Let me just make this statement loud and clear. Jersey's here, Jersey's here.
What is shaking, everybody? Welcome to another Brand Doctor Podcast episode. I am your host, Henry Kaminski Jr., the Brand Doctor, and today we have an amazing guest. Man, I picked up one of his products over Thanksgiving, I believe, and man, has it helped me tremendously take all the guesswork out of leveling up my podcast. And so I wanted to have him on the show. We connected on Instagram. Literally, here's how it happened. I was so pumped to get this product. I did a little IG story about it and tagged him in it. And he immediately responded and was like, dude, that's so awesome. You know, I hope you're enjoying the product. Is there anything I can help you with? And just that vibe, that energy, that frequency he was on, I could tell we were going to be bros. So we eventually started talking offline, and I said, you know what, let's have you on the show. I think more podcasters need their hands on this thing. And he is such a rock star when it comes to putting podcasts together. So today's episode is all about how to perfect your podcast. So without further ado, I want to introduce my man, Travis Brown, the founder of poddex.com. What is going on, my man?
Hey, Henry, it's good to be here, man. I got to tell you, I've been listening to the podcast, and I feel like I could listen to you read the ingredients of like a Velveeta cheese packet and feel at ease. You have that calming voice that just puts me in a really great place. So it's nice to be here live with you.
Yeah, you know, the way we do it here is we'll do the podcast live because I want to get that immediate exposure for guests and just the energy and the topic. And then what we do is it takes a couple of weeks to produce because we produce so far out. This will go live on Spotify and iTunes and all the podcast platforms in about 3 weeks from now. So it hits them with that next, form of distribution. Yeah. So I want to dive in here. A lot of my clients have podcasts and they're always asking me, how do we get more listeners? How do we monetize it? Is there common mistakes that people make that we should be aware of? So I'm going to pass it off to you and, you can start wherever you want.
Cool. Yeah. So, I think as podcasters, we do this we use this amazing medium to reach people, and, it can be a lonely place. You plug in a microphone, oftentimes you're alone and you're recording this stuff and you sort of put it on the internet and you don't always get that initial feedback. So, one of my biggest pieces of advice to people is just to think about your podcast, not as your latest episode, but think about them as little soldiers, and every episode that you create ends up in an army of this content that is out there working for you and fighting for you 24/7. So don't get hung up on the last episode. You need to just keep going. So talking about the developing your audience, right? So we all want more listeners, more downloaders, more subscribers, everything. Well, it's a slow build, but the way that you can actually really hone in and grow your audience is to just sit down and define who your audience is. So are there people out there looking for the information you're sharing? So a great place to start is just to look at Facebook. So are there Facebook groups that are in the niche or the audience section that you can serve, right? Are there people asking questions? For example, if you're a health coach, maybe you focus on the ketogenic diet. Are there Facebook groups that have people that are asking questions about the ketogenic diet? That's a really great way to really make sure that you're targeting an actual audience. It's very easy for us to say, my podcast is about everything and it's for everyone, but that will take you way longer to grow the audience. So I really recommend that even if you're doing that, scale it back a little bit. Try to go an inch wide and a mile deep and really serve a specific audience before you expand your portfolio to the masses. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's funny. I was talking to my son yesterday and we were watching Santa Claus 2, and the Santa Claus whips out this giant magnifying glass, right? And Dante's 3, so he's like a little man. He's going on 13. Okay. Just for the record. So he's like, Daddy, I got one of those. So he runs over to his bin. He grabs the magnifying glass, and I says, you know what we're going to do with that in the summertime? I'm going to show you something really, really cool. I said, we're going to take it outside on a warm summer day.
Yeah.
And we're going to put a piece of paper down, and we're going to put the magnifying glass over the paper, and something crazy is going to happen. He's like, what? I was like, Mr. Sun, we call him Mr. Sun. Mr. Sun is going to go through the magnifying glass, and it's going to put the paper on fire. And you should have saw his face. He was like, whoa.
Yeah, you blew his mind.
So, right? That's exactly what you're saying here.
Yeah. It is exactly what I'm saying. And it's very easy to try to want to run out and grab everybody. But, there's a guy named Kevin Kelly who wrote a book called 1,000 True Fans. And I love this book because it's like a free ebook. And really what he shares is you only really need 1,000 true fans to make a living as an artist or a musician or a podcaster even. And so instead of trying to focus on, I need millions of downloads, really hone in on who your audience is and find an audience. And it can even be as niche as backpackers or cyclists. I mean, you can really get 3 levels deep into a niche and really serve a specific audience. And, people will inevitably share that information with others. Word of mouth is the fastest way to grow. So if you're serving an audience, a very specific audience, really well, it will naturally and organically open up to other people.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's so easy to go off track and start talking to the wrong audience. Listen, I'm guilty of it. There's a lot of times I veer off course and I have to remember, like, who's my audience? It's the industry influencer. It's the personal brand. It's the person that wants to level up from where they're at right now, both through messaging and identity when it comes to branding. So, I have to keep in mind, like, some of the topics that I might talk about is not relevant to them because they're past that point. Right. So I'm just going to, throw myself under the bus here and say, like, a lot of times I put out, well, I should say in the past, I had put out content that was more for a beginner.
Yeah.
And our clients aren't beginners. So there's where the disconnect could happen. And now you're putting a lot of effort and energy into something that's in the wrong bucket.
Right. Yeah. So going back to growing your audience, one of the tactics that I really tell people to focus on is, we're leveraging social media right now to promote ourselves. It's a free way to promote yourselves. And a mistake that I see podcasters making over and over and over again is they're just saying, check out my latest episode. New episode out now. Go check out the new episode. And so there's a really quick way that you can fix this, which is telling your social media audience why they should listen. So you want to qualify them as a listener. So you're going to tell them, instead of go check out the episode, in this episode, I share with you X, Y, and Z, right? I create a feeling around it and create a reason why they want to go leave one platform to go to another to consume that content. So it's very similar to what I promote now with the beginning of your podcast. I see a lot of new podcasters, they sort of give away the beginning of their show to an ad or small talk, or just they're warming up. But every single podcast episode I release, and you can go back and check it out, it's called Podcast Therapy. I literally start the episode out by saying, in this episode, I'm going to share with you that, X, Y, Z. So if you ever, suffered from this, if you want to grow your podcast in this way, this episode is for you. And so what I'm doing is similar to what I do with music. Any major pop song you've ever heard typically starts off with the chorus. It's the most exciting part of the song, right? There's a saying in the music industry, don't bore us, get us to the chorus, right? So don't bore your audience with small talk and ads in the beginning. That's the most valuable piece of your content, because you're basically telling somebody exactly what they're going to get, and you're hooking them in to stay for the rest of the episode. And then after you have warmed up, you could do your small talk and you could do your ads and things like that. But you want to qualify somebody to give them the information that they're actually looking for.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to take that a step further and talk about the binge mentality or the Netflix mentality.
Yes.
One of the strategies, I guess, right, that I've been toying with is doing exactly what you said. But when the podcast produces, I create like a little cliffhanger, little 30-second cliffhanger where I'll be talking about a point, but I'll end the little snippet before I get into it.
Absolutely.
And a call to action is, we'll go listen to the full episode to get the answer. Oh my God, that has jacked up listens and crazy. I've been doing it like only 3 months.
Yeah.
So,
and you're basically doing exactly what every great TV show does, is towards the end of that episode, there's some type of cliffhanger and you just can't wait to go to the next episode. And so that is exactly what a hook would be, is leaving somebody with a cliffhanger. So they just need to know. You're hijacking people's brains, because once you get invested in that beginning of the story and then you don't get the payoff, of course you have to hear how that ends. So that's a great way to do it as well.
You know who does this really good? Mandalorian. That
Oh,
series
yeah.
on Disney Plus. Mandalorian. I am so glued. I'm a huge Star Wars guy, but man, I am so glued to that freaking series.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up Netflix, because podcasting is really the reason that podcasting, I think, is so popular and so accessible is because it's frictionless and it's on demand. So people can do it while they're lifting weights or doing the dishes or doing other things. We're so starved for information right now. We're foraging new information, and it's a great way to be able to consume that while you're doing other things, because even in 2020, we're all very busy people. And so to give somebody that opportunity to consume your content frictionlessly, just pressing a button on demand, and then when they fall in love with your podcast, right? I was talking about soldiers, they're able to just go back and listen to all your episodes. You're building up this library of content that works for you all the time. And the comparison that I always make coming from the music world is that there's nothing better than finding a new artist that you didn't realize was out there. You find their new album, you listen to it, you fall in love, and the first thing you do is you go back to see what other albums they had, and then you have all this brand new content. So again, the Netflix mentality, there's a lot of similarities between music and TV. So start to look for these patterns and things that you consume. And the next time you're like, oh my God, I need to watch another episode, what happened right before that? It was probably a cliffhanger. It was probably a hook. So try to steal that and put that into your podcast.
Oh, I love it. Travis, I want to get into how to start building up listenership right after this quick little message.
Sure.
If you're a business owner who feels your branding isn't truly representing the value that you deliver, check out this free video training that will help you level up your brand's messaging and online presence so that you can start attracting higher quality clients. Visit www.uniquedesignz with a Z at the end, not an S, .net/level up my branding. All right, so let's dive into this, Trav.
Yeah. So
how do we get more people to listen?
Sure. And the key word that you just mentioned is people. I think a lot of people, when we're making content, we're just thinking of, okay, it goes on this platform. It's a download. It's a subscriber. But the truth is that on every other side of a podcast, there's 2 ears, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and a heart, right? So there's people on the other side of that. So when you're promoting your podcast, there's lots of different ways to do it. But what I've found is simply using the human to human method, right? So I'm looking for human beings to join my community and to listen to my podcast. So the best way that you can do that is very simply, it's for free. It's just human outreach. Whatever platform you're on. Let's just say it's Instagram, right? There's lots of different ways you can do this. So the first way, we're all using hashtags so we can let new people know. But when new people come into your world, there's a really quick way that you can make a human-to-human connection. So don't use the autoresponder, spam message. What you want to do is when a new follower comes in, go take a look at their page real quick, try to find their name. And in Instagram, there's actually a little microphone button in the messages. And because you're a podcaster, you can use this to your advantage. You can simply send them a very quick message and say, hey, Henry, it's Travis from Poddex. And I just wanted to thank you for, following my social media account. And I'm so excited. And I noticed that you're into branding and I'm also into branding. You might actually enjoy my podcast. I have a podcast episode number 37 about how to brand blank, right? So you can use this. And the beauty of the audio message is, 1, you're a podcaster. 2, from a psychological standpoint, you need to turn your volume on your phone, right? A lot of people are looking at their phone without any type of audio on. And so they're already pre-programmed to know, I need to listen to this. And then you say their name. The best word in the English language to people is their very own first name. So they're like, oh, this isn't a pre-canned message. This is specifically for me. And so the connection begins, right? And then you follow that up with letting them know that you've actually looked into what they do or are interested in, and you've served them a piece of value after that. And the same thing happens to me every single time I do this. People respond, they say, thank you, because we're so used to just being pummeled by pop-ups, ads, emails, billboards, everything that is not really targeted to us as a person. It's just targeted to us as a group or an audience, right? So when you start to do this, you make this different connection that other people aren't making. Again, check out my podcast does nothing. But if I say, Henry, I've got an episode just for you as the brand doctor, and I really want you to check it out if you have time. It's episode number 37, and you can find it here. It's a completely different way of getting people interested and showing that you really care about people, not just downloads, because a download number is simply a vanity number. I mean, unless you're trying to get advertisers to pay you, it doesn't matter if you get 100 downloads or 50,000 per episode. That's just so you could share that with people and tell people what you're doing. But do you really have 50,000 people that are in your world that you've connected with on a real level? Because we're more connected than ever, but we're more disconnected than ever. And people are using, I love autoresponders and things like that, don't get me wrong, but there's a time for that. And when you're promoting your podcast, it's the time to be a human being.
Oh, I love it. That's the stuff that other people don't do. There's no competition in that extra mile, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's what's going to get listeners. That's what's going to get listeners to share your show, right? And that's why I always, I'm a huge avid of building community, and I'm taking 2021 as my year to really establish a much stronger community than what I'm doing right now. So I'm going all in on 2021. It's one of my goals. But one of the things that I always encourage clients and my audience to do is to build a list, whether it be a text message list or an email list, right? And instead of pounding people with promotions via those channels, I've realized that, sending an email to a friend and saying, hey, come check out this live stream, or hey, come check out this latest podcast. Yeah, you're asking for something, but it has no monetization attached to it whatsoever. It's here, go check this out. I think you may be, if you're on this list, chances are you might be interested in this topic, right? Because I'm not going to fill your feed with the irrelevant content. That's my promise to you, right? So using your email list, using text messages, using your Instagram, using all of your social channels to push people towards the show is really going to bring that listenership up. So don't forget that.
Yeah. And something that you mentioned that I just want to pull out there and go a little bit deeper on is I think podcasters are actually afraid to ask their audience to do something. And when you're doing that, I recommend having a singular call to action in your podcast, because if you give people 5 things to do, subscribe, go to my YouTube, go to my Facebook, they will do nothing and they will move on. But if you ask them to do one single thing that costs them $0, there's a very high percentage that if they're involved with you and you've made that connection, that they will actually do it. And if you think about the last 5 things that you stumbled upon, there's a chance that 4 out of 5 of those were a word of mouth recommendation. I'm always getting people telling me, hey, have you heard about this TV show? And that's the only way I really find out about things. Or, most of the podcasts I've heard are because people had recommended them to me. So it's completely free to ask your audience. And if you're building community and they feel like they're part of the community, they're going to want to help you grow. And we all love, this is something that we love. If you look at somebody like Robert Downey Jr., we love a comeback story, but we also like to be at the beginning of something. So you watch Robert Downey Jr. be the star and that he's downtrodden, and now he's Iron Man, right? But the journey is that we watch him become that, and we're part of that journey. It's similar to music, where you love finding that independent band that nobody knows about, and you tell everybody you were a fan from the beginning, and then eventually they become this big band, and you were a part of that growth. So asking your audience to share, asking your audience what they want more of. A lot of people just go run out and they may start say, I'm going to do interviews for this podcast. Well, I actually had a client who ran out of people to interview at about episode 100. And he called me up in a panic. He said, I don't know what to do. I don't have anybody for my next episode. And I said, Tom, why don't you do a solo cast? Why don't you just share a 10-minute story or something that's really affected you deeply? And he said, okay, I think I could do that. And so we released that solo episode as episode 101, and it got 3 times as many downloads as any interview that he had did. And he had some pretty big guests, but it proved that his audience actually wanted more from him. They wanted to hear more about him. So you have to ask your audience what they want and let them be a part of your podcast instead of just making it this fixed thing that you think they want. There's a lot of value in your community, the people, and asking what they want more of.
Gold. Gold right there. So easily forgetful of that. And so when you keep this top of mind, guys, what Travis is saying, it's just going to perfect your podcast even more. It's going to beef it up and level it up, and you're going to get some really great listeners that are going to turn into clients. And I want to listen, we're going to go a little over on this. I could tell already, because what you're saying is awesome. And I know my audience is getting value out of this. I want to talk about pod decks, but I also want to talk about monetization before we get into that. So let's talk about how we can potentially monetize our show. A couple different ways, perhaps, that you've seen work over the past, because this is, when I think podcast, I think Travis Brown. So,
wow, thank you.
Yeah. So talk to us about how to potentially monetize our show.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's, I tend to throw rocks at the competition for some things. And this is one of the things that I tend to throw rocks about, because when you search online for how to monetize your podcast, 92% of people are going to tell you that you need a sponsor, or you need to run ads, or you need to have dynamically inserted ads in your podcast. And I'm very opposed to this, because what you're doing is you're giving your audience a chance to go away from you to buy from someone else. Okay. So when you're thinking about monetizing, and I have a whole free workshop on this that you could get, it's at podcastbuilderclub.com. And I tell you these 3 ways, but I'm gonna tell them to you right now. Okay. And the reason that I don't like dynamically inserted ads is because if I'm telling a story and I'm getting to a very vulnerable moment, and vulnerability is something that keeps people listening, and then Geico Insurance inserts an ad right in the middle of my story to promote whatever the quote they're offering, it's really unappealing to the audience. And people are starting to really get turned off by all the advertisements. So there's 3 ways that I recommend that you consider monetizing. Now, the first way is simply by offering your own products and services. So, and if you don't have any, I can talk about some things that you can do, but simply offering your own products and services. You're building a community of people. They keep coming back. They like you, and people like to buy from who they like. So come up with an online course. What are the questions that people always ask you? What problems can you solve? What tips or tricks do you know that you could create a digital course around? It costs very little to make a digital course. You can use your phone. It's so easy to do, and you can offer that course to serve your audience in that way. So your own products and services, don't send them to Squarespace and Geico. And if you are doing this stuff, that's great. If it's working for you, that's great. But in the long run, you will make way more money off of selling your own products than getting a whatever the CPM rate is this month for sending people away to do something else. So the first thing is consider your own products and services. Secondarily, you can make exclusive content for your community. So something like Patreon, there's lots of different sites that do this, where you say, hey, listen, it costs $5 to support me, and every week you're going to get a bonus episode or content that I'm not putting other places. It's only for my community. Now, again, we've spent a lot of time investing in our community. They know we're a person, they know we care about them, and they know it's as easy as giving us the $5 they would have spent on Starbucks to help us keep going and keep doing the show. So if you're really focused on community, this is an easy sell because all you're asking is, hey, you can support the show. We can keep going without advertisements because those are annoying, and you get bonus content. Okay. And then third, I'm a big fan of promoting products and services that I love and use. So there's all kinds of different affiliate programs. I'm just going to use Amazon affiliates as an example. So you sign up for an Amazon affiliate account, and let's say this month you're really stoked about this coffee mug, right? So you're sharing with your audience, I really love this coffee mug. You know, it keeps my coffee warm, it blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to share a link to it in my notes if you're looking for my favorite new coffee mug, right? Well, you create a link in your Amazon affiliate account for that coffee mug. When they click on it, they go to Amazon just like they always do. It doesn't look different. It doesn't take longer. They don't pay differently, and they buy that mug. Well, you get a commission off the sale for that mug, okay? And you can do this because you're probably promoting things all day long, whether that be gear or books or the latest snack that you're eating, and all of those things are on Amazon. And everybody's using Amazon to buy things. So and don't be sneaky. Tell them, hey, if you click this link, it supports me, right? That's the number one rule of affiliate marketing, is letting them know it's an affiliate. We don't want to be coy in that way. But it's a really easy way to share things that you love and use and get rewarded for it. So I've had multiple people who are, let's say, a content creator coach who's constantly recommending cameras and microphones and gear. And he said, I watched your workshop and I put together this document that just had all my favorite gear in it with my links. And on Black Friday, I made a fortune. And it was because people trusted him to make a great recommendation, and they wanted to support him through clicking one link that you have to do nothing for. So those are the three ways I really recommend if you're thinking about monetizing, starting with that instead of just jamming an ad into your podcast or giving away the beginning of your podcast to another company. And you will make more money and serve your community much better in the long run than just trying to look big by having a sponsor.
Oh, so good. So good. So I have some questions about poddex.com.
Okay.
So this little freaking set or deck of cards have been such a game changer for
that makes me so happy.
Yeah, dude. So how the hell did you come up with it? And like, oh God, just start there, please.
So I think you'll like the story because I have a podcast editing company where I help authors, entrepreneurs, coaches produce their podcast. So they get to do the fun part, which is having these conversations. And then we take it in-house and do the rest. We edit it. We write show notes. We put it out on all the platforms for them. And so there's a lot of people through consultations that I just didn't end up getting to work with because of budgetary, or they didn't need me. You know, I really try to qualify the people I work with. So for all the people I couldn't work with, I decided, hey, I'm going to make a course, right? And I'm a big fan of courses. So I decided to build a course called Shortcut to Podcasting, where I could distill all the information I've learned in the last decade to give somebody the exact steps, no additional information that they don't need. Just like, these are the steps you take, and this is how you can produce a podcast and eventually monetize it and make money. So I spent 6 weeks building this course. And I subscribe to this theory called the lumpy envelope marketing theory. Now, mail is now underused with email and direct messaging and text messaging. And so what I was going to do is, when you bought my premium course, I was going to send you a surprise gift in the mail that was a deck of cards with some questions I had curated that I use at dinner parties. And people just always would tell me like, wow, like, I just love talking to you because I show genuine interest in them. So I developed this little deck of cards and I said, hey, when you buy the course, you get this free deck of cards, right? And so I launched the course, and nobody really wanted it because there's a lot of information out on podcasting, but people kept emailing me telling me, hey, what are those cards you keep sharing with us? So I decided to do what the smart thing was, okay, people are interested in this. I made a minimal viable product. I called it Poddex. I created a logo very quickly. I made a quick website. I pressed 10 decks. Okay. It cost me a fortune. I made a little ad on my phone, put it on Instagram, targeted podcasters, and sold out in 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, this is one of those flukes, right? And so I pressed 100 and I ran the same ad and I sold out in a day. And I figured out that having unique conversation starting questions was a tool that all content creators, podcasters, streamers, everybody was looking to use. And it made me so happy because, I'm a big proponent of asking really good questions that incite vulnerability or spark a conversation that you have no idea where it's going to take you and make this amazing content. So here we are a year later. I have this deck business that now is actually a tech business we have the Poddex mobile app. So I wanted to be able to give people who like physical things, the tangible, to be able to use these decks of cards. And then the people that were global digitally instantaneously get over 2,500 questions that are going to spark their next great conversation in the palm of their phone. So it's been such an amazing ride. And I've had huge podcasters and very brand new podcasters all reach out to me and tell me this tool has just changed the way I look at either planning my podcast or making a cool segment on my podcast. And it's just been so much fun. I even had a guy email me and say, I went on a first date. I forgot I had my pod decks in my pocket. I took them out. We talked all night long and I got a second date. So it's just, it's just been so amazing to see podcasters using this tool to create engagement on social media, to create new conversations. And it's just so much fun.
You have no idea how this changed the game for me, because I was sort of a wing it man for a long time until I realized that that's only going to get you so far and get you to a certain level, right? It's all about the planning and the process and really developing the show. And I had sat with my team and I said, we're going to build top, middle, and bottom of the funnel content for the show. So let's start with the pod deck.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the questions and there's a whole deck just on episode topics, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I created an episode deck because I saw so many podcasters running out of ideas. So I put together 50 unique episode starting prompts. So you could literally spontaneously shuffle up, pull a card, and still make content and not pod fade.
Yeah, dude, it was so funny. A couple weeks ago, I did not have a good week, and everybody knows what week that was because I was very vocal on social about it. And I'm flipping, and I was like, I got to put something out. I don't feel like it, but I want to put something out. And I'm flipping through the deck, and it says, "What am I struggling with this week?" And I go, "Dingo!
Yeah,
this is the show we're going with." And that show got a lot of views and listens because they were genuinely interested in what I was stuck on. And I got vulnerable on that show and people were like, listen, man, we love what you're doing and we're going to support you. I got a lot of great response, after the show. But if it wasn't for the deck, I might have not have put anything out that day because I just wasn't feeling it. Right. But we all know, the greats, they do it when they don't feel like doing it.
They show up.
Yep. Yeah, they show up when they don't feel like doing it. And I said, no, hell no. I'm going to get out there. And the pod deck came in handy. So
that's awesome.
Where can people learn? Well, first of all, I just want to say one thing about the app too. Guys, this app is no joke. You can tell when somebody puts together like a half-assed app, right? And when somebody puts together something of substance. And when I tell you, the user experience of this app, the content of the app. I mean, the guy's got mini courses on the app with little video tutorials and things like this. Like, I'm like, man, this is so thoughtful and thought through. You could tell he put some serious effort into this thing. And so I subscribed to the app. I got the physical cards. I'm like, I'm one of his 1,000 best fans because I'm like, what else has he got going on? Because I'm really serious about podcasting moving forward. And here's a guy that's a lot further down the road than me. So how could I learn from him and how could I support him? So I got to tell you, if you're not going to get the physical pieces, get the app on the App Store. Just type in Poddex, right? It'll come right up.
It'll come right up. Yeah. And we actually had the app done in March of this year, and it was just Poddex questions. And so I paused and I said, I'm building this community. What else could I put into this app to help podcasters without questions, right? So we put together, this is when Quibi was coming out. I'm like, I'm going to put together little mini courses that you watch vertically on your phone to help people. And I partnered with some world-renowned experts on social media, legal. I do a vocal warm-up, how to guest, all these things. And we're continually adding these things to the app every single month. I built an entire toolbox of all my favorite podcasting tools. When I go on Facebook groups, people are always like, what mic do I buy? I put all of the things in there that I love and actually use myself. We have members giveaways. We just gave away a Rodecaster Pro. We have a royalty-free music library. So we paused, and it was very hard because I was so excited to get this app out that, pausing for 5 months is sometimes hard, but it was well worth it because we were able to put so much more valuable content into this app to continually help podcasters. So I appreciate that so much because this is my first app ever. And I don't know if you guys have ever built an app, but it's no small task. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I'm just so pleased that people are actually using it. We just celebrated 110,000 card swipes. So questions are being asked out in the world.
That is phenomenal. Travis, when you put in the work, you reap the result, and you're clearly putting in the work, and you could see how passionate you are and hear how passionate you are about this. So I wish you nothing but the best in 2021 and beyond. And I know this won't be our last conversation for sure. You're doing amazing. You're inspiring a lot of people. You're helping a lot of people. And that's what this show is all about. Giving, I'm going to say living is forgiving. And that's what this show is for. It's to give and to help, because we all have our backstories. We all have our trials and struggles and all of that. And bringing people along that journey with us and letting them be part of something bigger than them and bigger than all of us put together, I think is what makes life so beautiful. And so the way you're contributing to the world is paying you back in spades. And I'm just happy to see another fellow entrepreneur putting in the work, putting in the effort, and wanting to make this world a better place. So big shout out to you, man.
My goal is to help as many people find their voice and grow their audience and start their own podcast revolution. So why don't we do this? There may be people who are watching that don't have a podcast yet, and they're sort of waiting for that magical sign. Maybe you have a Post-it note or something, and you're just like, I just don't know where to start. So let's give them a challenge. I want to challenge you, the new year's coming up, to start a podcast in 2021. And I want you to share your unique story with the world and your value. We're all snowflakes. We all deserve to have our stories shared. And so you may be thinking like, I just don't know. We're going to take this out of the equation for you. So you can go to free.poddex.com and I will send you this episode deck. All I ask is that you cover shipping, and you will have 50 podcast starting prompts. That's almost a year's worth of podcasts if you use them all. And you can lay these out and figure out what you could start podcasting about and get a leg up on, instead of staring at that blank piece of paper, right? Trying to figure out what to do. Start out doing it with a bunch of ideas that are proven to get listeners. So I just want to offer that to your audience, because we've been talking a lot about podcasting and podcasters that exist, but I think there's a lot of people out there who may have not taken the leap yet. And 2021 is going to be even bigger than 2020 for podcasting.
Give them the URL again.
Sure. It's free.poddex.com.
Free.poddex.com. Travis, I could go another 38 minutes. Easy.
I think we might be able to set the Guinness World Book of Records for the longest podcast. We should look into that.
We really could, dude. We really could. You're just about as passionate as to podcasting as I am to branding. And so, guys, go check out Travis Brown, poddex.com. The free plus shipping offer here is amazing. I'm telling you, I'm using the decks daily. And it's just taken the whole podcast to the next level. So Travis, thanks again for coming on the show and sharing, everything that you've learned over the past and just giving it away, and helping us build our audience and monetize it and, perfecting our podcast to the best of our ability. So Trav, thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be connected to you, Henry. And I really appreciate being able to share these stories on your show.
Appreciate you, man.